Hello, welcome back to the Underhand Free Throw. I am Simon, and today me and my co-host Ian are going to talk about a rebuilding team in the NBA right now that we're both really excited about, which is the Orlando Magic. So we're going to go over a bunch of stuff about the Orlando Magic, including what picks they have, what players they have that we think are like foundational pieces to build around, and what players are maybe more fall into the category of like maybe. And we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming draft. So before you settle in and watch this video, I just want to remind you, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll keep making it.
The Orlando Magic.
Yeah, I mean, they're currently in last place in the East, which is, I mean, that's worse than even you or me expected them to be going into the season. Neither of us was super high on Orlando. They've been terrible. They're bottom five in offense and bottom five in defense.
Yeah. I think an interesting thing about Orlando is all the positive things that we said about them going into the season. We weren't wrong about, and not that we had wacky opinions or anything. I think everybody thought that Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner were a really interesting duo to build around. And that is still true. Both of them are having seasons that have Magic fans excited. Like a lot of conversations about the Magic begin and end with how excited people are about Paolo and Franz. And they both had some really impressive flashes, even if neither of them, if both of them could actually, just start hitting threes at a decent clip, that might get Orlando out of the offensive cellar. At least I'm a little surprised how poor they are on defense this season. We're gonna do this with each of the teams. We're gonna look at what their draft capital situation is, sort of which young players they have on their roster and which looks like sort of foundational pieces or keepers, and then sort of go down the list and try to project them going forward a little bit. So we'll get the draft picks out of the way early because they're less exciting than actual people, though I don't think everyone would agree on that. Some people, the idea of a person is a lot more exciting than the reality of a person, and that is what a draft pick represents. So I'll just list it right off. They're not like OKC. They're not drowning in draft picks. They've basically, they still have all their draft picks, which is good. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's great when you're not a super strong team that you haven't already, 3 years ago given up draft picks. And they also have got a top 4 protected from Chicago in this year's draft. That looks likely to convey. It's hard to say. Like Chicago, they could get healthier and not be in contention for a top 4 pick, but it's conceivable, I guess, that Chicago falls or has draft night luck and gets a really high pick. But it's likely that Orlando's going to have 2 picks in this upcoming draft. And 2 years from now, in 2025, they've got a top 5 protected pick from Denver. A lot can happen in 2 years, but they're likely to get that one too. So they're sort of net 2 positive on the draft picks, and they don't have any draft picks going out to anyone else. So
I guess we'll list out our players that we think are keepers, build arounds for Orlando's future. And we'll talk about the guys that are maybe not so much, but I guess we can start with the obvious ones, right?
Do you think there's 2 obvious ones or 3 obvious ones?
Well, I'm imagining we'll have at least 2, and we can go from there. Paolo, Franz Wagner, I'm assuming no debate there. And then we can talk about Wendell Carter. Would you consider him a build around, or, a guy who could potentially be involved in a trade or something?
Funny, like I just treat Wendell Carter in my mind like he's 30. Like just kind of, I think of him as sort of a more average Al Horford. He has to
turn 24.
Yeah. So it's hard to project him. And Chicago fans gave up on him so quick. Like he sort of stagnated as a shooter in his early years, and Chicago fans were just out because they were really excited him at the draft as sort of an Al Horford type who's going to be able to play pick and pop, stretch the floor a little, switch a bit on defense. And when he wasn't like genius at that in his second year, and we didn't take this huge leap forward, Chicago fans were like, we're done, we're out. And that's fine. That's a normal fan way to react. But why did Chicago's front office react like that? Like, I don't understand when a front office makes a total fan move of being like, I've got this 20-year-old big man who's not an immediate all-star. I need to send him out with draft picks to bring back Nick Vucevic. Like that just seemed like because Wendell Carter this year might be better than Vucevic. I think that's like at least a conversation that a lot of fans would entertain. So on that, like he's a keeper, but then he's like taken those little mini leaps. He's an efficient scorer from all kinds of places on the floor. He's scoring, he's rebounding, he's like a
good passer too.
Yeah, pretty good passer.
Decent playmaker.
Yeah, like a kind of center that gives you a little of everything and fits into a whole lot of schemes. And so if he's just 23, yeah, I think we should call Wendell Carter Jr. A keeper unless they get the number one draft pick and draft Victor Wembanyama. But even then, I think like Wendell Carter Jr. has some lineup versatility, and you can play him with that. They play him now next to Bol sometimes, next to Mo Bamba sometimes. And with two really large bodied players, and because Paolo's still like a 4 defensively.
Yeah, Paolo, I don't see Paolo at the 5. I mean, you could argue that given his size, he's 6'10", maybe 6'11" even. But yeah, I mean, just watching him, he clearly has the play style of like a big wing, not a big man.
And he's not long. Like regardless of his height, he's not going to be a monster rim protector or anything like that. So.
And I will say with Wendell Carter, really favorable contract. He is on the first year of his rookie extension. It's a declining deal. $14 million this year. It declines all the way down to 10.8 in 2025. So excellent contract. We'll see what his next deal looks like, but for his current deal, like that's gold.
Maybe we should at least acknowledge that Paolo Banchero definitely exists and is important on this Orlando team, because he's certainly, their best prospect and I like clearly identifiable guy that they're going to be able to build around. He is already absolutely punishing matchups like in an athletic version of Luka Doncic sometimes when he's attacking the paint, and showing a really great passing game already. I don't think the handles are quite there for him to be quite that sort of like, they're giving him a lot of playmaking duties, and it's been a bit hit or miss, but he's definitely showing he's got potential in that area. The shot has been worse than advertised, or he started the season cold at least. And sometimes I do look at him and I'm like, I think, the skill set could use a little bit of tightening up. But I could see him next year, 2 years from now, slightly tighter handle, slightly more consistent shooting form, and just sort of like being one of the best offensive players in the NBA.
Yeah, but this is the time when you want Paolo to be doing all the things that he's not already great at in game and getting those reps, because he's not a very good pull up jump shooter right now. And he doesn't have the best handle. Although I'd say his handle is pretty good.
It's
19-year-old guy at his size, right? It's not good for like a guard, but he's not a guard. He's a 19-year-old who's 6'10". So for the situation he's in, I would say it's pretty good. But I just think who cares about trying to win every single game right now? You want to get that experience. I always think back to like Giannis's season under Jason Kidd, where he basically ran point guard for a good part of the year, and how much that just Giannis was going to develop to be a dominant player regardless, but that just gave him another level, that maybe would have taken longer to develop, or maybe wouldn't have developed. And now Giannis is out at the perimeter initiating offense all the time, and looks very comfortable doing it. So you're going to have to go through that process if you want Paolo to turn into like a true superstar, top 10, 15 player in the NBA at some point. So might as well do it now.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason one would nitpick Paolo Banchero is that he's so good already that it's easy to picture just, again, this like very perfect offensive NBA player. So it's like, he's so good that you want it already. You're just like, what about Paolo Banchero if he shoots, 37% from 3-point line? What about Paolo Banchero if it's just like, one less turnover, or one of those turnovers is an assist. The playmaking is just a little bit nicer. Then you're just like, oh, then he's an MVP candidate. So that's my
Yeah.
only level of nitpicking Paolo, is that I don't think he's, quite there as a, mega productive NBA player. Had Paolo been drafted, to a playoff team this year, he'd be playing a slightly different role and would be still like physically bullying guys and being able to use that skill set to be effective. So yeah, you're right. It's great that that he's being allowed to spread his wings. And it's great that they've been able to do that without stopping Franz Wagner from spreading his wings, and because he looks pretty good doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a ton to say about Franz. He's just like the archetypal, like really well-rounded NBA player who's um really good at everything, other than maybe like pull-up jump shooting. But a lot of young players struggle at that and get better at
I
that.
mean,
But
I like his pull up. He's definitely like, taking some shots that maybe he won't be taking down the line when they have a more competitive team. But like, he can pull up off the dribble from three, and
yeah,
he loves threatening the straight line drive to the rim, and then and then countering into a pull up. Like, he has good strong balance, um, countering into a pull up off a drive, which I think is a really really great skill to have, because he's also shown the sort of courage to attack the rim. It's hard. It's been hard. I found it hard to watch Orlando and assess Franz Wagner's defense, because I remember watching Wagner in college and being like, this is one of the better defensive prospects I've seen in the last, 3 drafts or something like that. He was the kind of big guy who was moving his feet with guards and blocking threes and in isolation and stuff like that. Just doing, when you see a guy doing like that, you're like, okay, this is a potential defensive monster in the NBA. And you don't
mm,
hear as much of him about him as a defensive player at that level. When I watch him, it's more solid than standout. But again, he's not playing in a great defensive system with a great defensive infrastructure. But that also, on that, like, I kind of think that Orlando should have a little bit more fight in them on defense, considering the individual young defenders they have in Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, Gary Harris. Terrence Ross is okay. Like, do you think there'd be a few more like plus defensive lineups out there? And it kind of makes me wonder, like, are some of these young guys a lot worse than I'm picturing? Is it like, how bad is Paolo on defense? Like, how does Wendell Carter Jr. project as a long-term defensive piece is something I don't have a great handle on. Like, and that's important. Obviously, guys get better at defense as they get closer to their prime and get more NBA experience. But that's something I have less of a handle on than Orlando, is like, how do these future pieces project as a defensive team? I'm not really sure. Like, my old information wants to say like they're going to be great, and I even thought that Paolo is not completely hopeless on the defensive end. I think he's got good feet on defense, even if he's got really poor hands on defense, and sometimes plays like he doesn't have arms. Like,
yeah,
a lot of moving his feet and staying with a guard, and then just forgetting to contest the shot. Like, just jumping up in the air and forgetting, like, your arms are the thing that are going to bother the shot in the end. And he doesn't seem to always agree with me on that point.
yeah. Well, I think as far as like reasons why the Magic struggle defensively, well, first of all, like the positive, they're one of the best teams in the NBA at defending the three.
Yeah.
They allow a very poor percentage from three. Just if you look at their opponent shooting, they're one of the best teams to league at defending that. But conversely, they're awful at defending the rim. One of the worst teams at protecting the rim in the NBA, and that kind of makes sense. Wendell Carter is a little undersized, not necessarily an elite athlete, and also he's been out half the year. So, and then they've had Bull and guys like Mo Wagner, Franz's brother, trying to protect the basket, who are just not excellent rim protectors at this point. So
Yeah, they're a poor rebounding team as well, so they're giving up second chance points, and you think like they're able to put a lot of size in the paint, but that's not really working out. Also, compared to some of
yeah,
these other teams we're going to talk about, they've got almost no veterans on this team, right? Like, we mentioned Terrence Ross and Gary Harris,
Gary
but
Harris.
like, after that, it's all young guys, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
no one. Franz's brother Mo Wagner is like the next oldest guy in the roster. He's
Yeah.
25. So this is, I think maybe that explains away some of it. Is like some of these other teams have a couple more functional guys who are going to sort of help organize things on defense, and Orlando's just like skipping on that, which and getting extra developments for guys like Bull. You had any thoughts on Mo Bamba as a
Well,
piece in Orlando? Has the ship sailed on him being a part of the future, or do you?
well, I think we should move into our talk on the players that may we either aren't sure about or maybe Orlando should consider
Yeah,
moving on from.
yeah.
And Mo
So we're
Bamba would
keeping
definitely,
we're keeping Paolo and Franz, obviously. I
yeah,
want to keep
and Carter.
Wendell. You want to keep
Yep,
Wendell? All right.
I'm good with
We're
that.
up to three building blocks in Orlando.
Yeah,
And then we go into this
and
whole
I'll
group because I feel the next like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys are all sort of. I mean, keep them around for now, but don't get married to them.
Yeah, I would say Mo Bamba's been extremely disappointing, and this was one of
Yeah.
the more puzzling extensions this offseason. I think Orlando gave him 21 million for the next 2 years, and it's a 2-year deal, right? It's not, but
Yeah, that's like
like,
the mid level at this point, right? So he can shoot, like he shoots threes. Like he's been a capable 3-point shooter now for the last 2 seasons. And he's never been awful at them. He does protect the rim a bit. He's just like, I mean, he's one of those guys. There's so many basketball movements that he's so bad at. There's so many, just
mhm.
like looking sometimes at like the way he takes his steps. They just don't look strong enough to like turn those things into successful offense or defense. There's just like some weaknesses in his body that he's having a hard time sort of getting over to be able to translate that into real NBA play. So, but I think Mo Bamba has a future in the NBA as like a part of a rotation where you want to bring in a just tall, long body with some shooting touch. Like that's going to keep you around. That's going to have a lot of teams interested into seeing if you can solve some of their problems for a long time. But I guess one way we could think about this is like, let's go through these last 6 or 7 guys and being like, let's imagine they're free agents at the end of this season and you have to lock them
Yeah,
into a contract extension and it's going to be something more than the minimum sort of thing. How many of these guys would you keep? Would you keep Suggs?
yes,
Fultz?
no, purely because of the
Okay.
injuries,
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
not because of the ability.
Cole Anthony?
Yes,
Bull.
yeah, I'm keeping Bol around.
All right.
Not as a starter, but as an eighth man in the rotation, sure.
Yeah. Chuma Okiki.
That one's a maybe for me, and I like Chuma Okiki.
I think he
When
inspires
he's
a lot of maybes.
Yeah, I mean he's another guy where it's just injuries are the question with him.
Yeah.
Like he's like a really physical, tough nosed. Like he's undersized. He plays the four. I think Orlando's played him a little bit at the back at five, even.
Yeah.
Um,
He's out there
you
as
know,
like a kind
he's
of power player.
yeah, he's undersized in that role, but he's really physical and he's a two-way guy. So like, yeah, those guys are valuable. So not a guy you want to rely on or give a ton of minutes to, but definitely a guy you want to have as an option off the bench.
I think I'm going to pass on Okiki. I think like, the shooting has dropped off for 3 straight seasons now if it doesn't perk up this year. And so his
Mm-hmm.
offensive upside is starting to disappear. Like he's becoming a little bit more of a specialist as like a sort of defensively capable guy who can bully a mismatch if one presents itself, but not something that I'd commit long-term dollars to. Caleb Houston is the next one.
That's a wait and see, man. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a rookie who's barely touched an NBA floor. He was a highly touted high school prospect. I know some recruiting sites had him listed like top 10 recruits. Very early on in the season, he was projected as a potential top 10 pick in the NBA
yeah, I remember
draft.
that.
Just couldn't really get it going in Michigan. He couldn't really make shots, fell out of the rotation. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea to hang on to a guy like that, at least play out his rookie deal and see what happens.
I mean, he had a weird late in the draft comeback. He had sort of, because he had kind of, yeah, like you said, gone from pretty hype prospects coming into the season to sort of just dropping out of everyone's top 100. And then at the last second, it's like all the sort of draft analysts learned, like, oh, it seems like NBA teams still want Caleb Houston. So, he was back on everyone's mocks, and then ended up going really early in the second round. And he's getting minutes in
Mm-hmm.
Orlando. I think part of that is just their lack of shooting. They're just like, well, we got to
Yeah.
put someone on who like has an NBA level jumper. He looks like he does have an NBA level jumper. So yeah, I think it'd be unreasonable to say anything other than wait and see with Caleb Houston.
Yeah, he's a
But so
huge guard that could really shoot it in high school, and you hope that, like, well, he's displayed touch at some point in his life. Hopefully, he can become a really good shooter, and then purely by virtue of size, like even, and I haven't seen enough of Caleb Houston to determine if he has the athleticism to be like some awesome defender or not. But he's big, and guys like that, if they try, can at least provide some value defensively.
yeah, we already talked about Hampton. I'm a pass on Hampton. I think I'm not buying Hampton stock at this point. Has not showed enough, and I don't think the upside is there. But though I wouldn't be surprised if he did
Yeah,
become a rotation NBA guard somewhere. I just wouldn't
he
spend money in Orlando.
he might. I just think if you're Orlando, you don't want to invest those last few roster spots that you have available on guys who are probably going to top out at just like a decent guard,
Yeah,
unless you're planning on upping their trade value and trying to trade them or including them in some type of package. But yeah, I think when you have a talent deficit like Orlando, especially when you have like two gaping holes at the two backcourt positions, you need to keep collecting second round picks and drafting guys or signing guys and trying to hit on someone.
yeah. I think big pitch in Orlando. If with some lottery luck, they're going to have two decent lottery picks in this upcoming
Yeah.
draft, and hopefully they're able to add either some, preferably if they can get a guard who can shoot in their rotation next year, that'd be great. I think they should look to in the draft to add shooting, or add guard play again, preferably. Those are one and the same, but because I feel like if they come out in the draft and draft another guard with a shaky jump shot, I'm just going to be like, I don't know why you think this is not this is kind of not worked out for this franchise for a decade now. Got a long legacy of drafting shaky jump shooting guards. So, but I mean, they've already got this incredible. They've got two dudes who are like 6'10" plus who can play
Yeah.
multiple positions. That's an incredible foundation to have. Like it's a very like Orlando fans should be very ecstatic about their future, even if they're going to continue to lose a lot of games this year. It would be cool to see them turn around and play a decent stretch at some point, or just sort of like, Paolo and Franz can tease a little bit for the future. We can start seeing some growth. That'd be great. But again, they want to get in the Wembanyama sweepstakes, and even if he's not in the cards, upgrading their backcourt. I'd like to see them do it as soon as next year. If they're going to add two lottery picks, like, chase a medium-aged veteran if you have the opportunity through trade or free agency, because it'd be nice for them to have a actual usable guard rotation.
It's funny you mentioned the whole like avoiding the shaky jump shot thing, because this draft, if you miss on Scoot Henderson and you're looking for a guard, there's two twin guards. We'll get into this more when we start talking about our draft, but
The
Amen and
twins.
Alcer Thompson,
Yeah.
big, long, athletic
Yeah.
guards with
Yeah.
questions about their jumper. It's perfect
Yeah,
for Orlando.
or yeah, they're destined for each other. They're gonna draft both of them, right? They're gonna have
Yeah.
we have a non-shooting twin backcourt next to Franz and Paolo. I like watching the twins play. They're pretty exciting. It's weird watching them play in the setting they're playing in, but they're still pretty fun.
Got any closing thoughts on Orlando?
No, again, like I think out of a lot of the teams we're going to talk about, like I don't think it gets too much better than Paolo and Franz. That is just a really having like I just think you can build all kinds of lineups around that and have all sorts of like offensive and defensive flexibility, and just sets them up to be this potentially like just massive team. Like we look at what the Clippers and the Raptors and some other teams are doing, even the Pelicans to an extent, and be like, the Magic are going to be able to do this, but they're going to have like 2, 6'10", 6'11" guys sort of in the middle of that, and playing with a big maybe. So yeah, it's everyone's excited about Orlando. They're fun to watch because of the makeup of their team, but they're not playing good offense or defense. So if that's your thing, you're probably not having that much fun watching Orlando this season. But yeah, bright future ahead. Brightest future they've had since, drafting Dwight Howard.
I will just say I am having fun watching Orlando this season. It's purely because of Paolo Banchero, and all I got to say is thank God that John Hammond overcame his urge to draft Chet
Oh
and
yeah.
went with Paolo this year because
No, draft. He wanted to draft Jabari. That was the news for a while. It was like Jabari was going to be the number one
that
pick for
was
a
the
while.
word on the street. The other word on the street, if you looked into like Orlando's draft room, was they weren't telling anybody anything. So
Right, fair enough.
A lot of people
who
wanted
knows
Chet
about
to
Chet
go
right
there.
now, though?
Yeah,
Like
that's true. I
we
mean,
can't.
Chet could be a great player. We don't know, but
Yeah, we do know that Paolo is a better pick than Jabari.
it wouldn't have been a very fun season this year if they had picked Chet. So
yeah.
So I know that was a long video, but if you watched so far and you like this stuff, we have more. So feel free to watch another one right here. And we'll see you next time.